Hey everybody, this is Carl with RetroGaming Magazine. I was coming back with a news announcement about the TurboGrafx-16 Mini that Konami's coming out with. They recently just announced 7 more titles for the mini console, which will bring the total to 57 games. Unfortunately, the new titles announced, or they're not as great as you would maybe hope they would be. Certainly not for me. You'll find out here in a second. First up, we got I'm gonna butcher this. Suri Senshi Spriggan. I'm just gonna call it Spriggan for the PC engine. Anybody that's not familiar with Spriggan, you probably will recognize this as in North America anyway. It was you might recognize it as Musha on Sega Genesis. I believe Space Megaforce on the Super Nintendo was a similar title to this. I may be off on that. But Spriggan is it's not exactly an official Alest title. It's listed under as similar, which it shares a lot of similarities with Musha or Robo Alest if you're playing on the Sega CD. But it's an overhead shooter, and you pretty much shoot everything that comes on the screen. You control a robot, and you're taking on weird-looking enemies. Next, we got Spriggan Mark II, another shooter. This time it's a side-scrolling shooter, and making use of the CD. I believe it's the CD, the PC Engine CD on this one, which I have voices and all that good stuff. This time you can definitely tell you're playing a giant robot. He's got a sword. I mean, come on. Who doesn't want to play a side-scrolling shooter where you fly around and you pretty much hit enemies with a sword? You also have projectile weapons like lasers, missiles, and things like that. It's for fans of scrolling shooters. I mean, you got 2 here that we never got in North America. At least on the TurboGrafx-16 anyway. Next up, I got Dragon Spirit. Now, we did get this one in North America on TurboGrafx-16 and on the Nintendo, which was kind of interesting. NEC, they weren't that big on following the trend, I should say. They promoted, a lot of the games they brought over were like outside the norm, like JJ and Jeff, for instance. Dragon Spirit by Namco is just another one of those. It's out of the norm. We did get a similar title on Super Nintendo. I forgot the name of it right now. Anyway, you fought dinosaurs and stuff in it, but in this one you're flying a giant dragon. And you're fighting other dragons. You're fighting creatures, fantasy creatures and such, which is it's different. I mean, it's not your typical overhead shooter, kind of like how Dead Moon and several other TurboGrafx-16 shooters, released early on in the lifespan were. Deep Blue being one, where you play a fish, I believe, and you're underwater, or mechanical fish, and you're underwater and you're shooting. Dragon Spirit's a lot like that. It's different. It's definitely one you might want to try if you're into overhead shooters. If you're keeping track, that's 3 shooters so far out of 7 new titles. And we're going to keep on trucking with down the shooter lane because we have Galaga 88, another title that we did get in North America, but this is the PC Engine version. I am not sure what differences there are between North America and Japan, especially with this title. But if you're a fan of classic arcade games, here you go, Galaga 88, kind of remake of sorts, basically updating the classic. And if you can't get enough of that style of shooter, go for it. If you want something that's graphically upgraded, take a look at, there's a new Galaga game, or a newer Galaga game on Android and iOS, I believe, that upgrades the graphics, gives you a little bit of a storyline, type challenge and such. Such. Next, I'm going to butcher this one too. Okay. On the official list, it's called in North America, there's similar to this, kind of like how Spriggan's similar to this, called Samurai. Action. But if you don't remember Samurai Ghost in North America, I don't blame you. It was pretty much one of those it fell under the radar type releases. It wasn't known for being that good of a game, but I know Game Pro and I believe EGM were not impressed with this one. Hey, who knows? Maybe over the years that's gotten better or something. Maybe the Japanese version is better, for one, because I'm sure there's changes that were made for the American release. Let's see. Next up, we got The Legend of Valkyrie. Now, this is one. It appears to be a overhead action adventure, kind of like Legend of Zelda, on the NES. But there's a lot. From what I can see, there's a lot of talking, and unfortunately, it's all text and it's in Japanese. So I'm not really sure why, unless text is not, understanding the story is not really detrimental to you being able to complete the game. I'm not really sure why Konami would bring this one. But, hey, at least it's not a shooter. Oh, sorry. So neither was Samurai Ghost. So far we got 4 shooters, and then one side-scrolling action game, and then 1 overhead action role-playing style game out of 7. Rounding out this is one I wish we would be getting the Japanese version. It's Splatterhouse. The reason I say I wish we was getting the Japanese version is because there were some edits that I know, by heart, because I was really into, wanting this game. In fact, this is the game that caused me to buy a TurboGrafx. Buy a TurboGrafx back in the day. And by the time I bought it, the local electronics boutique was already sold the 1 or 2 copies of Splatterhouse they had, so I missed out on it back then. And that sucks. But anyway, there were a lot of changes. There's some changes to some of the bosses, I believe, and there's changes to like upside down crosses, which is not a big deal. But the bosses is what worries me. Is like, what did they change? Why did they change it? And unfortunately, we're going to be getting, on the TurboGrafx-16 Mini, we're getting the censored American version, which kind of sucks. But what are you going to do? I mean, we're getting an extra 7 games, 4 of which are shooters, 2 side-scrolling action games, and then 1 overhead role-playing action adventure. So, really, who can complain? I do want to say that, considering they are adding more games after the fact, that we may, maybe that, leaves open that we'll see more titles. Maybe Konami will even tap into the independent homebrew community and bring, release a few titles like that, like some Aetherbyte. I believe that's how you pronounce their name. They've got several titles that look, pretty interesting. What about the team that did Mysterious Song? I mean, there's a lot of homebrew from independent developers that could make an appearance. I don't know if they will. It'd be great if they did. It'd be the first time any of these console makers tapped into the homebrew independent community to bring out upon release anyway. Titles that were created well after the life of these consoles that they're based on had ended. And I wish we could see, I know Konami won't do it, but I would love to see some like new professionally developed games for the TurboGrafx, added to this. I mean, I know Star Fox 2 was not newly developed, but still it was new. it was new to most players that were wanting to play legally and not interested in doing the emulation and all that stuff. Maybe Konami can do something like that. Maybe they can find some titles that are that were unreleased, or throw some betas or something on here. Throw some if there's if there's an American version of a Japanese game, I mean come on, put it on there. Let us see what the differences were side by side. Anyway, this video is getting a little long in the tooth. This is Carl with Retro Gaming Magazine. If you like this video, like, comment, share, all that other stuff. There's support links in the description below if you want to help keep the website and this YouTube channel alive. And yeah, that's about it. Thanks, guys.